Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ollie Folayan. I'm head of process engineering at the engineering company Costain, and I'm also co-founder of the Association for Black and Minority Ethnic Engineers, the diversity partner of the the Wider Africa Energy Summit. I'm delighted to be your host this afternoon, where we'll be welcoming some partners of the upcoming summit in Aberdeen to help provide some insight into the current Africa energy market. The Wider Africa Energy Summit is now in its second year following a successful debut in Accra, Ghana last September. We're delighted to welcome it to Aberdeen this year and to help just bring a greater conversation between African opportunity and, I would say, the North Sea or UK continental shelf expertise. The corporate partners for this event are the African Energy Chamber, Society of Petroleum Engineers, the Energy Industry Council, Scottish African Business Association, Global Underwater Hub, and of course, my organization, AFB UK. We're delighted to welcome some of our partners at the event, just to give you a taste of the size of the opportunity across Africa and to give you what to expect. So my guests for this afternoon are NJ Ayuk, the chair of the Africa Energy Chamber and a main event partner, Paul Eardley-Taylor, who is the gas sector lead from Standard Bank, and Ifeanyi Yegiri, senior analyst at Welligent Energy, and last but not least, Johann Jansen van Rensburg, director of Sub-Saharan Africa at NOV. This is a live broadcast, so please drop any questions you have for our guests in the chat, and we will try and get to as many of you as you can. So without further ado, I would like to welcome NJ Ayuk.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. Good afternoon, sir.
So it's a pleasure to have you at this webinar. You're somebody that I've listened to for quite a long time, who always has, I would say, his finger on the pulse when it comes to this issue of the energy future of Africa. So can you tell us a bit about yourself, about the work of the Africa Energy Chamber?
Firstly, about myself, I'm just a little country lawyer that fell in love with oil and gas and energy and wanting to try to get to make energy poverty history in Africa. I think the African Energy Chamber has become the most prominent organization in Africa that really believes in African energy security and Africans having the right to produce hydrocarbons to get themselves out of energy poverty while also dealing with issues around governance, above ground risk issues, but also looking at a low carbon future. In that, I think most of our work has come into advocating for better condition, better fiscals, better governance provisions, because you could have all the resources that you have, but if you don't have the policies and the fit that meet fiscals and that meet technical capabilities, then you wouldn't be able to attract the investors that Africa needs. You wouldn't be able to incentivize African investors themselves to take advantage of those opportunities. So we felt it's very, very important to give an African voice to that, really driving our continent forward, but believing in those key principles that have made a lot of Western societies better: free market, limited government, individual responsibility, and drill, baby, drill.
That's something that will be music to the ears of most people in Aberdeen. So I think it's fair to say you have some kindred spirits in the northeast of Scotland. These are some of the themes that you covered during the Africa Energy Week in Cape Town, which is now the largest event in Africa that promotes African opportunities within the African sector. Can you give us some reflections on that event, that took place? What were the main themes that came out of it? And if you don't mind, it'd be great if you could focus on some specific regions for opportunity and projects. These are things that will be interesting to our audience.
I think a big message coming out of Africa Energy Week is very simple. Exploration is back on the table. The times when we demonize oil and gas, it's gone, at least for now in Africa. We are back. We are going to put, I think you saw pride in being an oil man again. And I think that has come with a lot of work that we've done over the years. And personally, I was very happy because I always feel a little tight when I go to Europe and I meet a lot of people and they don't say I'm an oil man, they say I'm an energy man. It felt so good to see people say I walk in oil, because what you found out of Energy Week, it's that it was a firm and solemn recognition that this industry that has driven human flourishing, has improved our life conditions, life expectancy has gone up. This industry is back and is going to work for Africa and international investors. Yes, what you had Mozambique come out of, had an FID just during on the Coral North, just the same time during Energy Week. We had to get people go there. We saw deals coming out of Nigeria that is going to drive more new production in that country. Wingwa committed to almost $20 billion over the next 5 years in improving production in Congo, Brazzaville. That's going to take it to 200,000 barrels in that field alone. ConocoPhillips pledged another $6 billion that they're going to do work in Equatorial Guinea to get Ophir Energy to bring Ophir Energy's previous block to bring LNG into EG LNG. And you saw Chevron committing to on the $10 billion Ascent backfilling project, bringing Yolanda from Cameroon into that. And that, I don't want to go back up north, Sonatrach signing new deals there. It was very, very refreshing to see that came back into Africa. But beyond that, there was also a strong commitment from financial institutions that for a long time have neglected our industry because of the demonization of fossil fuels that we've seen for many Western countries. These financial institutions were back. I mean, some people who wanted to talk with us only at night, now we're talking to us during the day. So it felt so good. We were not a side chick anymore.
It's funny you say you talk about the thing of feeling like a bit on the side, the conversations that are had on the side but are not part of the main conversation, and it's good to see them starting to come out and really support the industry. And actually, that is where what the North Sea oil and gas kind of sees as its next frontier very much meets with some of the themes that were captured in the Energy Week. So, and it's for that reason that I'm personally really excited to see greater collaboration between the UK energy supply chain and African clients, African investments. So, yeah, and I was particularly pleased when I found out that you were supporting the wider Africa Energy Summit. So, what were your reasons for supporting it? What are the opportunities that you see could come out of this?
Why would we not support it? I mean, I met Ken, he talked to me, it was a less than 90-second decision for me. I went to my board, we approved it. I'll tell you why. If there's any time that we need to work together, you cannot find a better partner in OGV in really looking at the North Sea. They have built something, a big reservoir of talent, a better well-built supply chain. These guys have experience. They know how to work shallow, deep water. They know how to turn around. Don't forget our history. A lot of Africans got their skills out of the North Sea, working up those fields there. Most of the companies out of the North Sea, they work today in Angola, they work today in Nigeria, they work in Algeria, in Libya, in Senegal, where you see new production come with Sagoma and Woodside, and you're seeing that even in going to Mozambique. So you going to work with people that are tried, true, and tested in various disciplines. And at a time when we're seeing a big skills gap in our sector, this is a time when Africa can benefit. Don't forget the educational institutions around there have built, trained, and evolved a lot of Africans. But yes, even what's better, we talk about building local content and partnerships in Africa. If you're going to build local content and partnerships, you need to go to those who have it, and they have done it, and we can work with them. So we are so interconnected with the North Sea. When you look at African fields, the standards, the system so well. We like peanut butter and jelly. We get along very well. But I even tell you what is more important. What is more important is the future. You see the research centers, the technology stuff that these guys are putting out there. We don't have the R&D budgets that they have out there. So it's time for us in Africa to really get out there, work with these guys, because they're building the energy industry of the future. And that low carbon industry, but also serving us today. They have the latest technology when you want to drill, baby, drill. They also have the latest technologies in producing in a better environment. I think we could, I'll be a little bit greedy. Their politicians in the UK, they're busy counting emissions and killing the industry out there. I just want to go back there to the North Sea and say, you have a home in Africa. And by them doing that, it reduces the cost of exploration in Africa because they have some of the best geologists out there. Reduces the cost of production in Africa because you're going to bring highly skilled people, but also will build partnerships that will drive, because you know why? A lot of exploration and production in Africa is going to be done by independents that have cut their teeth in the North Sea, but also African independents. This is time for us to do it. That's why I am 100% behind this event. That's why I'm 100% behind pushing African leadership to take a look. London is good, but you know what? London is all about money and fish and chips. In the North Sea, you really get the guys who want to get their hands dirty to get the job done. And that's why we have to be there. And if there's any African leader or any African business watching this and still has a doubt, you know, if I put my hat in the ring, I'm putting my hat for the right things. And these guys in OGV, they've done a yeoman's job in committing to it and really pushing it. I just want to march with guys who have really put Africa first, and they want to make sure that the UK energy sector in the North Sea, together with the African energy sector, works together well. Yes. We have a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make that happen. Let's not lose that chance.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in many ways, I will say that Africa has, in many ways, and through all of the people who have worked here over 5 decades, have also helped to build what we now call the North Sea industry. So there is almost a merging of minds. But speaking about some of these technologies and operational areas that you think African projects can most benefit from, can you tell us of some of these areas that you think, you would often hear about digital twins, AI integration, all of those that fuse into well completion technologies. But are there some areas that you've already identified where you can see this future?
I'll tell you this, AI, if you look at, we all gloating about Namibia today. If you look at some of those fields that were drilled in Namibia with 2D, even 3D seismics, and they had dry wells, today with AI and new ways of reinterpreting seismic and looking at different things, we having discoveries. We need to go in there with some of this R&D stuff that is being done in the North Sea and bring it right into Africa. You know why? How that helps? It helps us de-risk Africa and make us more bankable and discover new prospects for drilling. That's really, really important. But also, you have to also look at their mistakes, okay? Sometimes we only want to look at their success, their mistakes, because they're busy right now counting emissions out there, not thinking about the number of people they're putting out of work. We want to learn from their mistakes and not make those mistakes in Africa and keep ourselves focused to ensure that we have cheaper, affordable, and abundant energy for everyday Africans. But also look at this. Some of the drilling technologies that you need to do small-scale drilling, even for onshore or even offshore or shallow drilling, you have that done there. Services, tubing, integrity management, well management, and all of that kind of stuff, you have it there. But also interpreting seismic. At the end of the day, what has happened in the industry? We had an industry where exploration is no longer the lifeblood of our industry. We have to go right there and turn it around, because exploration is indeed the lifeblood of our industry. We need to become more explorers and looking at innovation and looking at how they have done that. They're getting that into Africa. But also look at this, cost-effective technologies that they use in the North Sea, even with a tight period with some of the crazy liberals they have out there really putting more taxes, but they've been really able to work on some of those fields to have real good returns for their investors. We need to learn that and see how we can take some African fields, be it onshore, be it shallow water, turn it around and make it beneficial, because when people are making money, then they can spend more money in investing. When they invest more money, we see multiplier jobs. We get everyday Africans getting jobs. Government gets more revenues. We get our energy security, but we also put people in better place, and we don't have our young people trying to cross the Mediterranean to go seek for jobs in European streets.
Yes.
That's why one of my first visits, when I'm there, I'm going to visit NOV's plant right there, and I'm looking forward to visiting that with Johann and Arthur, and I'm happy Paul Eardley is there, because we need to get guys like Paul Eardley to bring the money, so I get to finance these guys to come right in and do stuff. Welligence can give us all the nice fancy report, market analysis, to tell us where to go and where not to go, and looking at all big data, so we make the right decisions. But if anybody's watching, 18 and 19 in Aberdeen, don't miss it. I've been to the spot, really nice, secluded. They got me to meet the mayor, really nice guy. The guy's been to, he spent time in Angola, all over Africa. A great city to be. The food is amazing. I went out there, I came back out here, drank a lot of beers. My wife, Aberdeen, I think I had an extra 2 kilos. I'm going right back. I'm going right back at them. I need more. I need more of Aberdeen. So you can't stop me from coming. Get ready. I'll be down there with my whole team. We need to be there. We need to make this benefit Africa, and these partnerships work for us. So I'm so excited about this.
Indeed. There's something you touched on, just, I know we're getting close to the end of our time, but there's something you touched on just now when you were talking about people crossing the Mediterranean, which speaks to migration, which is often seen as, a big political hot potato here in the UK. And that has often led to restrictions being put on academic institutions about who can come to the country, and it's reducing the number of courses that are on offer. Do you how do you think, or do you think this gap, actually, this reduction, provides an opportunity for training companies and academic institutions help elsewhere to help the future talent pool in Africa?
Exactly that, because before you would get 800-900 visas from some countries to come train in schools in the UK, be it Aberdeen or Dundee, you're not seeing that anymore because of these restrictions. So now what does that mean? We have a lot of people who are training organizations in Scotland that can now work on building African training institutions. I'll give you an example. Namibia is talking about building a petroleum training institutions. You know what? Get out there to Namibia, providing that training, get them on the job training, so that these young kids can get from being unemployed to learning how to work on a jack-up rig and everything. There's shovel-ready jobs there for them. And I think that happens the same in places like Equatorial Guinea, in Congo, Brazzaville, in Gabon, in Angola. We can never stop short when you get in this capacity building happening. You know what? You know, one thing I tell you on this, you have a lot of people that work this industry. They old, they gray hair, they're retiring and everything. We're not closing that skills gap with new young people in the industry. It's far more, most young people want to work for Google and Amazon, not Exxon and Chevron. We need to turn that around and make our industry hip again. So we get the trainers, the real cool guys out of Scotland, get with these Africans. And when the Africans are seeing that, then the young Africans say, you want to bam bam, you want to chill with the big boys. You get in there, and after that, they're going to become the entrepreneurs of the future. Then they're going to start doing better things. But we don't have to all send them all to the UK to train. We can set up specified training programs and create regional centers of excellence across Africa using Scottish technology and help and support there and empower these people. So at the end of the day, our job is to make the little guy become the big guy. That's the feeling I had when I was when I came in this year into Aberdeen, and I saw little guys becoming big guys because they just went out there. They had that grit to get out, that work ethic to get up at 4 o'clock and go out there and just get the job done. I think we need to combine that with an African spirit, and that's why I encourage African business. Go in there, you will find something I found. You'll be blown away by what you see there. So I think it's wider. energy summit is going to be better. It's going to be better than what most people think. And this is just the beginning. We're going to continue building. And I'm very happy with some of the companies I'm seeing showing up. I think, you know what, sends that message that we picked from Africa Energy Week. Africa is back. But when the North Sea is stronger and Africa is stronger, our oil industry is back because we're producing energy that makes the world move. We're producing energy that, imagine the energy from the North Sea in Africa. That's energy that doesn't come with encumbrances. It's not come with dictatorship. It's not come with any kind of things that we're buying energy from difficult nations. We're buying energy that is coming out of freedom, good governance. And that kind of spirit is what's going to drive us in the future to really build the Africa that we deserve.
Wow. This is not just very informative, NJ, it's also very inspirational. And I, for one, can't wait for the Wider Africa Energy Summit, where we get to hear more of your insights into the sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you. So that was a taster. So if you've listened to that, I can imagine that you are just can't wait to secure your spot at the Wider Africa Energy Summit. So moving on to the next section, NJ spoke there a lot about the opportunities that are there within the market. The next step really is to find out a little bit more about what those are. So we're moving on to a session about market insights, and we are delighted to welcome Ife Onyegiri from Welligence, who will give us a short presentation, and then we will go through some of the key trends. So Ife, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ollie. Thank you for having me. I think the slides, everyone should be able to see the slides now. Like Ollie said, I'll just highlight the region. Africa, like NJ said, it's hot, it's heating up. That narrative has changed. There are opportunities, both from an M&A perspective and from new projects that we see coming up, from investments. The governments are listening, and I think that we've reached a tipping point where even the legacy regions are looking to reverse production decline. They're looking for more investment. They're listening to the operators. We're seeing emerging region. We're seeing exploration coming up. So I just have a couple slides I will go through, just highlighting some of the changes in the region and highlighting some of the opportunities for everyone. So this slide just to set the scene. So right about now, production out of SSA is about 5.5 million barrels of oil per day, 75% oil, 25% gas. As of now, we're going to see this split increase, gas being a transition fuel. We're going to see by 2030 about 35% of the production then, which will be at about 6.5 million barrels per day. So we're seeing growth, and we're seeing a pivot towards gas, which is really great for the region. So oil growth and also gas growth. In terms of exploration, in the last 5 years, we've seen about 7 billion barrels of oil equivalent discovered across the region. Namibia being the key hotspot. We've seen discoveries in Cote d'Ivoire. We've seen discoveries in Angola this year. This year, we've seen about 1.3 billion barrels of oil equivalent discovered. And we're also tracking a number of exploration wells across the region, about 66 in the next few months. And I will just highlight a couple of them through the slides as I go very quickly that we can watch out for. Big wells. So exploration is definitely returning, driven by the majors. We're seeing more smaller, large-scale independents and smaller independents getting involved on the exploration front as well. From an investment perspective also, we're seeing a very strong FID pipeline. So far this year, we've had 2 FIDs, one out of Nigeria. We've had one, ENI Scholar Not also, $7+ billion project. we also know that ENI is also pushing barley in phase 3 in Cote d'Ivoire. So a very, very strong hopper 2025 into 2026. And I will chat about these opportunities in the next slide also. Finally, M&A. The last 5 years, we've seen about 17 plus billion dollars in M&A across the region. This year, we've seen just about 3 billion thereabout. So, but still a strong pipeline, a lot of opportunities in countries like Nigeria. Angola also is an interesting point. Even emerging countries like Namibia, we're seeing a new crop of opportunities, early life pre-FID opportunities coming to market. Some of them a bit gas heavy also. Namibia, a very interesting region. We know the big opportunity there from an M&A perspective would be Galp trying to reduce their stake in Mopani there. So very, very exciting future for the region. And I think there is opportunity for everyone at this point. So this slide here, like I was saying about investment coming back to the region, the slide to your left looks at FIDs that have been taken across the region since 2020. We can see that pre-COVID or post-COVID, investment kind of dwindled, but then it picked up again 2022, 2023, 2024. This has really been driven by Angola, right? Total Energy is pushing a lot of things down there in Angola. We're now seeing Nigeria government listening, passing incentives, has been strongly passing incentives in Nigeria to push things forward. So we're seeing that region picking up. Interestingly, we're also big the new regions like Mozambique, like Namibia. So we're seeing in terms of the next 24 months about 80 billion in terms of new FIDs in the region. This is driven mainly by deep water plays, LNG plays, the majors heavily pushing things. Mozambique, multi-TCF LNG projects there. We have Namibia also with Venus and Mopane and even Capricorn also. So a lot of the region is really hot now, both from an investment perspective and from an FID M&A exploration perspective. Obviously, the key major still pushing things ahead. ENI has really led the charge there. Total Energy is also a key player pushing things. Shell just FID'd in Nigeria, a $2 billion project. So we are seeing those majors really push things in the region. And I will just close off very quickly with this slide is just looking at getting projects done on time and within budget, and ENI has been very strong from that regard, trying to get projects on stream quickly. They are the leaders in terms of cycle time, getting projects done quickly, and I think that all the other majors are learning and are trying to get this project on, get to first oil as quickly as possible. Next slide, I will just stop off here, and because Paul will soon be coming in. Here's just the exploration story, like I said, very interesting. The most interesting, so this chart looks at exploration, oil versus gas. So we're seeing Garcia plays also coming, Garcia discoveries also coming in. The slide at the middle looks at that. Barrels discovered by country. You can see the yellow bar, Namibia, really, really strong there. And this light slide looks at by peer group, whether it's a major or is an independent or is a large or small independent. And it's been the majors for the longest time, but we're seeing a more diversified mix in terms of in terms of exploration. So very, very good times for the region, I would say. I will stop here, and I would stop here for now.
Okay. Well, welcome, Paul. I believe Paul Eardley-Taylor is going to join us. Hello, Paul.
Good afternoon.
Oh, fantastic. We'll ask you a few questions, just ask you to give us an introduction before we have a three-way conversation, picking up on some of the very promising points that Ifeanyi has raised, as well as sort of digging into or picking your brain about some of these issues. So can you tell us a bit about your background and your expertise on Africa with Standard Bank?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I lead gas activities for Standard Bank. For those who don't know us, we're Africa's largest bank. We're active in 20 countries, which will soon be 21 with Egypt. Myself, I've been in energy banking for 27 years. First 10 years, I did various emerging markets with HSBC, and I've been with Standard Bank for 17 years.
Oh, fantastic. So welcome again to the show. Just for both of you, and I'll let you decide who picks this up. But we're seeing some interesting trends globally, and every region has different priorities. So with this in mind, do you think Africa is next in line, if you like, to join the global LNG boom?
Maybe if I kick off on that one. The fundamentals of Africa are really quite strong. So you've got a population of about 1.6 billion, which will be about 2.5 billion by the mid part of the century, something like that. At the moment, Africa produces about 70 million tons of LNG. It's got plans to produce another 70 million tons. And really the big two themes from an LNG perspective are growing out the mega projects where you can, Mozambique being the obvious example, to some extent Tanzania, and then developing the small to medium-sized projects. There's lots of them happened in West Africa, and Namibia may well be next. And then on the back of that, you're going to get a combination of two things that are really important for African development. First of all, there'll be small-scale LNG. Small-scale LNG can really make a big impact in a number of countries which don't have access to natural gas or LNG. Just to pick a few of them, Eswatini, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mauritius, Madagascar. And then the second big theme is domestic gas and regional gas. Here, the bellwether will be Mozambique. Mozambique has been delayed, we all know that, but the domestic gas is coming. And what is different from the first time round in about 2019 is it's not just domestic gas, but there'll be a particular project in Mozambique, but we expect there'll be more of a regional flavour this time round. There'll be a pipeline connection to Tanzania going north, and there'll be very large gas-to-power projects that could supply, among others, the Copper Belt. So from an LNG start, it will broaden out to involve small-scale LNG and domestic gas and regional gas. Thank you.
So you'll say that in many ways the pathways for what you might call a profitable exchange within Africa, not just between Africa and the rest of the world, are already being laid down. Would that be correct based on what you've just shared?
100%. Small-scale LNG is the most obvious example. So most African markets import diesel from the rest of the world. That's well known. The big refineries from the Middle East are Jamnagar. In the future, they will most likely be trading small-scale LNG with each other from a regional neighbour. Just think of Botswana from Namibia, think of Mozambique to Eswatini, Mozambique to Madagascar or Mauritius. And you have shipping distances reduced, emissions reduced, and you also have increasing regional Africa trade.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, what Paul's just said ties in with the general optimistic tone, if you like, of the presentation. So would you agree with that, as Africa is poised to benefit from this global energy realism?
Absolutely. I think Africa has the resource base. With Africa, the resource base hasn't always been the problem. It's always been infrastructure. It's always been financing. I think infrastructure being a key part of things. But Africa is aligning both from an FLNG and as Paul has said, from an LNG perspective, like just scaling LNG. Nigeria, for instance, adding an additional train. Like so, it will. I think Africa will remain very core to really that global picture. It's obviously at the moment it is small, but once the Mozambique projects come on, they are quite significant in terms of their scale, and they are quite scalable. The resources in the ground, the resources available, but it's just getting that infrastructure picture, and there's also a pricing picture when you look at the domestic situation in some countries. Getting those factors right has really historically been the bottlenecks with Africa, I would say.
Yeah, well, you've sort of preempted what I was going to ask you next, because you've painted a really positive, really promising feature. What do you both sort of view as those realistic enablers and potential barriers to realize
Paul, do you want to go
dreams,
first?
whether it's
Yeah,
first
sure.
FID and so.
We can, obviously Africa's huge, there's lots of countries, so I'm just going to pick on a couple, just to sort of answer the question. I'll go for South Africa and Namibia, because for different reasons they're quite interesting. So South Africa, for about 18 years, has been a bit of a laggard in economic growth, essentially going 30,000 feet on the big picture. The overall energy and economic paradigm that was in place, coal, imported oil, has largely broken down and is in the process of being replaced. Renewables will play a big part, but of course what we're arguing is that oil and gas will start to break through. And really the three elements of oil and gas we see, there's large-scale LNG imports where gas is absolutely necessary to replace some of the declining coal. The government's electricity plan that's just come out envisages 17 gigawatts of gas to power by 2039. A lot of that will involve LNG imports. So, for example, Standard Bank, led by myself, is the advisor on the Zululand Energy Terminal in Richards Bay, which is expected to be South Africa's first LNG import terminal. The second element in South Africa of real high interest is onshore gas. On the whole, biogenic gas that doesn't require fracking. One producer already who produces small-scale LNG and helium, Renogen. You have 2 to 3 others in reasonably advanced exploration, D3 Energy, Kinetico Energy, with Rhino resources to come. And then the big one, of course, is the Orange Basin off the west coast of South Africa, which brings me neatly to Namibia. So in the Namibian case, everyone's got different ways of counting the wells. We say there's been about 18 discoveries from about 22 wells and 10 flow tests. There's one well hopefully approaching discovery quite soon. And Namibia's got an interesting challenge. It's never done something before. So it's really sort of walking the same path as Guyana did a few years ago, Suriname is doing at the moment. How do you implement multi-operator, multi-FIDs quickly in an environment where your policymakers have not done it before, and which can lead to transformational change to benefit the public? In line with that, Namibia has an electricity dependency on 3 neighbours, none of whom are particularly strong. If you look in a 5-year lens, Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa. So the likelihood is that Namibia needs to import LNG before replacing it with its own piped gas for gas to power purposes. So those 2 countries, and of course we've probably got in the order of 14, 15 countries out of our 21, which either explore for oil and gas, develop oil and gas, or produce oil and gas. That just shows a microcosm of the scale of the opportunity. And really Namibia, just putting some numbers to it, if you mentioned some numbers, if we think 4 or 5 big offshore FIDs in Namibia, that could easily be $50 to $60 billion, couple of $1 billion for gas to power. And in the South African case, just the power RFP that was issued in the last week, on its own, that's over $3 billion, an LNG import terminal, onshore investment. You're probably talking, plus pipelines, you're probably talking at least $4 billion. So there's very large opportunities for investors at the moment. Thanks.
Iffy?
Yeah, so just to jump in. Just to jump in and just provide maybe some high level in terms of enablers to getting gas to work. Pricing is a big one. LNG, typically pricing is not a big issue, but domestic gas pricing is a big one. We need like more liberalized markets. There are countries like Nigeria, which is obviously one of the biggest gas suppliers at the moment, gas producers in SSA or in Africa. They do have capped prices, right? They have regulated prices, which really stifles expansion. Infrastructure is a big one, both from an LNG perspective, a domestic gas perspective, or even regional projects like the Transatlantic Gas Pipeline. That is an infrastructure project. So infrastructure is a big one, and financing is also a big one. Again, these projects have to be bankable. right? With gas projects, you need to get that alignment across the value chain. So from both your upstream players to your midstream to your downstream, right? So that sometimes, if that alignment doesn't exist, it will be very hard for these projects to fly. So from that perspective, those are then the overarching, the biggest part is obviously regulation, right? You can't do anything without regulation. You can't do anything without getting basically the approval of not just the government, but just the regulation has to be fit for purpose for this project. And we have seen a country like Nigeria start to take moves to improve things because they had liquidity challenges. I think Egypt has also struggled with liquidity. There is that issue from the gas perspective, and you need to solve those issues if you really want new projects to start pushing ahead, especially if they are going to be done domestically, as opposed to LNG, where you will get like LNG sale contracts even out of Asia and all of that. So those are just a few points, a few bottlenecks, I would say, to unlocking gas across the region.
Yes, we're over the sort of time allotted for this interview, but I'd like to just ask you before we go, if we could just throw into that mix the picture that you've just painted, the role of African independence, and also the role that even mergers and acquisition activity might play in this overall picture. Could you maybe just give us a few closing thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think out of historically, most of the gas projects have been driven by the majors. Even like GTA, LNG, like all of that has really been driven by the majors. But the African independents are stepping up now, particularly in Nigeria. Nigeria is the standard country where they've picked up big assets from the majors. These assets have supplied LNG and still have a ton of gas in the ground. So it is to be seen. There are a few standout names across Africa in terms of the independents that have made gas work. A few names come to mind: More Than Plum in Tanzania, and Seplat in Nigeria. Seplat really pushing to expand in Nigeria, but that would be export-wise. But definitely, as the majors start to sell out of assets and sell out of these regions, these assets are falling into the hands of the independents, and it will now be meant to be seen if they can push and how well they can execute these projects and at what scale. But I would say that generally in a country like Nigeria, certain blockers have been unloosed. Pricing, we saw the first third-party gas, large-scale third-party gas pricing agreement out with NLNG this year, signed in August. So all those ball begs to really expand in the sector are kind of going off. And then we are seeing the independents. I think with the independents, financing is a big issue for them, right? Not just with, particularly even with oil, some of them have struggled to raise stuff. So with gas, obviously, it's trickier, but I will say that the next few years will be very interesting in terms of how these players can make use of these huge resources that they have picked up in the last 2 years or so. So it's
wow. I feel like I feel like we could actually explore these conversations for another hour, and we won't get to the bottom of it. That's why you have to come to the Wider Energy Summit. But I'd just like to thank you both for your insights, and I actually look forward to getting more of your insights between the 18th and 19th of November. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to welcome last but certainly not the least speaker, Johann Jansen van Rensburg, Director of Sub-Saharan Africa at NOV. Welcome, Johann.
Well, thanks, Ollie.
Well, first, like to thank you and really thank NOV for supporting this event, being a silver sponsor, and you really clearly grasp the importance of these events. So how important do you think events like the Wider Africa Energy Summit are to just driving partnerships and investment?
To that point, I mean, Africa needs all the help it can get at the moment, right? And we can see that there's a lot of, and NJ touched upon it, that there's a lot of industry knowledge. There's been complicated basins around the world that's been developed. And the essence of this, the wider energy conference and all the other conferences around Africa, focusing on Africa, is key to unlock that knowledge sharing, right? I mean, it's a question of looking at people that's already done it, right?
Yes.
And then see how we can take that, the lessons learned, and then incorporate that into Africa. So Africa is in a good position in the sense that I'm not going to say it can copy from others, but it can learn a lot from others and improve on things that has gone wrong in the past, right? So they've got a big database to tap into.
Sort of good sort of wells of knowledge, excuse the pun, to draw from. So from your perspective as a global technology partner, what are the most pressing infrastructure hurdles? I mean, you had Ife and Paul there talking about some of the more sort of market-based and regulatory issues. What, in your view, are those infrastructure hurdles?
As a service company, infrastructure constraints remain one of the biggest challenges that we see. And it's anything from inconsistent power supply, limited logistic networks, to underdeveloped maintenance and repair facilities. And these has the potential of increasing project cost and reduce equipment uptime, right? So at NOV, and I have to say the majority of our peers that's active in the region, we're looking at a way of, basically two ways to addressing this. First, by localizing our supply chains, so setting up services and repair hubs closer to operations, like we've done in Angola and Nigeria, for instance, to cut turnaround time and dependency on imports. And secondly, by leveraging digitalization, where we have predictive maintenance, remote monitoring, and training tools to enable us to support customers even in remote or infrastructure light environments. So ultimately, the goal is to make African operations self-sustaining and globally competitive.
That is a real sort of, there's a real coherence there between kind of stated values and operation. It had often been historically that companies almost operate very differently when they're operating in Africa. It's great to hear a global infrastructure provider speaking about it, not just from a business sensible point of view, but from an ethical point of view as well. So we've touched on it there, this issue of local content requirement. Do you see that as an enabler or a barrier, or is it just is it a bit of both?
Well, local content is front and center to all the discussions we have these days. And, the question is of whether local content requirements empower or constrain is one we face, as I said, nearly every discussion we have in Africa. And my view is local content is an enabler when it's implemented collaboratively. It drives job creation, it builds technical capability, and it keeps value within the country. The challenge is when expectations exceed the readiness of local ecosystems. And for example, where there's a gap in training, supply chain maturity, or certification standards. Right? That's something that we need to acknowledge. So what works best is partnership over prescription. And at NOV, we invest in developing local suppliers and technicians to global standards, not just to meet compliance, but to ensure real capability transfer. So local content isn't a barrier, in my view, isn't a barrier. It's a shared commitment between the government, the operators, the technology partners to invest in people and infrastructure. So when it's done right, it strengthens not just the oil and gas industry, but the broader national economy.
Yes. I mean, do you find, speaking about things being sort of done right, do you find that there is a general acknowledgement? Because you spoke there about times when there is just a genuine gap with the best will in the world, you can't get the local people who can do particular tasks just because they've not been trained or equipped yet to be able to do those tasks. Do you find that there is a general acknowledgement of that fact by governments in Africa and by some of the institutions that perhaps assess these things, or is that sometimes a potential barrier?
No, I mean, there is an acknowledgement. And the thing is, and that's why you have all these local content rules when they come out, and you see that they are relaxed, in the first month, 2, 3, 6 months after they've been released. Because, it's not just about the governments developing these local content rules or local industry. It's also sitting around with the, service providers, the global service providers, and developing these things in conjunction with a roadmap. It's not a short-term fix. This is a longer-term plan, right? And there is a roadmap that we can basically go from A to B to C a lot quicker. But hence, the whole industry needs to sit around the table, and this shouldn't just be driven by governments itself.
Yes. Indeed. As Africa sort of balances or tries to balance, what's often called the energy trilemma: affordability, security, and transition, or security with sustainability. How can technology providers like yourselves at NOV support operators and governments in adopting cleaner, more efficient solutions? Because we've got a particular opportunity here to not just learn from what we've done, but think of ways of doing things even better. So how can we do that?
Yeah, I mean, Africa Energy Story, isn't just about choosing between hydrocarbons and renewables. It's about producing energy more efficiently and responsibly.
Yeah.
Right. So technology partners like NOV have a key role in that balance, and we contribute by deploying technologies that reduce the environmental footprint of existing operations, such as energy efficient drilling systems, advanced processing solutions and control, and also electrification. We're also supporting hybrid rigs and digital platforms that optimize fuel use and emission monitoring. So there's a lot of current technologies, and there's current technologies under development to look at how we can make the existing infrastructure cleaner and more efficient. But looking beyond oil and gas, NOV as a company is also leveraging our expertise in fluid management and engineering to support geothermal, carbon capture, and hybrid power systems, for instance, areas that are gaining traction in several African markets. So the opportunity isn't just about cleaner operations, it's about building an innovation ecosystem where African operators and governments and technology partners can co-create the next generation of sustainable energy solutions. Right. So again, we need to work together. This is not just one group that can solve the problem. If we can combine our brain or our gray matter, I think there's solutions to be found for every challenge that we currently face.
Yes, indeed. By the way, if you're listening to this and you have a few questions, we've still got a few minutes. Please feel free to drop these questions in the chat because I would quite like to put them to our speakers. Is now an opportunity we can bring in? I don't know if A and Paul. I'm pretty sure NJ is probably not still here. Now a time we can probably bring them just to answer a few sort of last minute questions. So the question was being asked. I don't know if NJ is here. So I'm going to put a question to you. Please feel free, anyone, to pick this up. With Nigeria continuing to rank amongst the highest gas flaring nations globally, what scalable strategies are being considered to convert flare gas into usable energy? And how do you see technologies like Kesha gas engines enabling flare-to-power solutions that not only reduce emissions, but also unlock free decentralized power generation? I know that was quite a long question, but I'm hoping you caught the gist of it. So does anyone want to
Yeah,
pick that up?
yeah, I can pick that up. I
Thanks,
think
Sophie.
over the years, flare gas has kind of reduced in terms of in Nigeria. This has been driven by end of routine operators, but generally, from a regulatory point of view, we have had in the gas flare reduction program. This is organized by NUPLC, which basically designates specific flare sites and is basically working with smaller operators to utilize this flare gas to utilize this flare gas for maybe CNG projects or like very little small scale LNG projects. Now that is in progress. That program is in progress, and obviously technology is a big part of it. I don't know what the Waukesha gas engine is about. I don't have the details, but definitely converting flare gas into maybe CNG or small scale LNG will require innovation and will require technology. So that's something I know that Nigeria is looking to do, and that initiative is on the way. This is obviously combined with other operators rolling out end of flaring programs across their portfolios. So I think they're taking a step in the right direction, I would say.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Ife. I'm going to take another. I'm going to share another question here from Sakil Vankar. It says, as an aspiring lobbyist for African energy, I've observed how organizations like ours have successfully reframed the oil and gas narrative from a perceived impediment to a vital engine for poverty eradication, energy access. What was the pivotal strategy for achieving this crucial shift? And how do we institutionalize this perspective to ensure it outlasts the current wave of global energy activism? I'm gonna ask you, Johann, to go with that first because I think we touched on things that kind of lean in that direction. So Sakil believes that we have been able to sort of reframe the oil and gas narrative to one that isn't just a perceived means of making profit at the cost to everything else, to now a vital engine for poverty eradication and energy access. So he's asking, what was the pivotal strategy for achieving this shift, and how can we maybe make this normalized in the way we talk about energy, particularly in relation to Africa?
I think the thing that pivoted it, and again that's my view, is that governments getting to realize that they need to do something about the energy poverty, right? In the past, especially in the past, I mean, Africa has been, a lot of companies have been parachuting in, developing the oil, and then just leave, right? Or selling off assets.
Yeah.
But now there's a notion that, in order to really put Africa on the map, do something about the energy poverty, we need to make sure that companies stay on the continent. We transfer the knowledge and we make sure that we build a proper infrastructure so those developments can be supported. And for that we need people. We need to develop people, right?
Yes.
It's been too long a time. It's been reliant on external knowledge. The importance is developing the internal know-how to support the industry going forward, because that's the future. We can't just, develop the resources and take it somewhere else. It needs to stay in Africa in order to address the energy poverty.
Indeed. It's often said you can argue with theory or philosophies, you can't argue with results. And when you start to see some of the impacts, it makes the case. I'm going to wrap up with just the last question, which I hope, Paul, it does touch on something that you were talking about. So talking about South Africa's energy transition and its historic reliance on coal, what strategic role do you foresee for natural gas in balancing energy security, affordability, and decarbonisation, particularly in the light of recent infrastructure and policy developments?
Over a 10-year period, it's really quite large. South Africa is very unusual because coal still represents 70% of the country's primary energy consumption. Really, really unusual. Gas is 3%, and that 3% doesn't include a single megawatt of grid-connected power. So as I mentioned, there's really three themes going to come through and change that dynamic. First of all, it's going to be LNG imports to produce the badly needed backup power and mid-merit power that the country's never had in its history. Second is the onshore gas, Mpumalanga State, Free State, which should do 2-3 gigawatts plus small-scale LNG, some piped gas plus helium. And then the big one, and we can see it looming as well, and it's been touched on by Iffy as well as myself, is South Africa's portion of the Orange Basin. More of the Orange Basin is probably in South African waters than Namibia. Namibia is going to go first. South Africa will follow. That's not unusual. Norway produced oil 6 years before the UK. But then when you get the combination of those three factors, you should see very different energy balances by about the 2035 to 2040 period. So the country will have the rare opportunity and indeed likelihood of decarbonising by switching coal to gas, in effect, but also producing oil and gas at the same time. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Paul, not only for giving us such a robust answer, but being able to do it in such a short time. That means that we are still not too far over the hour. Thank you very much to our speakers. Thank you, Johann. Thank you, Ife. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, NJ Ayuk. So this wraps up this month's special OGB Live, which I hope has provided you with some valuable insights into the African energy market. I hope this also given you a good taste of what to expect at the wider African Energy Summit, which is now just 3 weeks away. If you're interested in attending, please go to the website to find out more on www.waesummit.com. And we appreciate your time and participation in today's webinar. We hope that you found the session valuable and informative. And it just remains for me to say thank you to all of you, our guests, and hopefully see you in a few weeks' time. Thank you.